Welcome, everybody, to the chapter layout. I've just titled this video Flexibility. The reason being, there are so many layouts that you might end up seeing depending with the institutions and depending with departments and also the field of study. That is why I have to give this video flexibility. It's very important for you to be flexible when it comes to the chapter layout. Important thing for you to note is the method of inquiry of the research approaches. We have got quantitative, we have got qualitative, and we have got mixed research approach. And it's very important for you to know that different approaches require you to use different chapter layout, different paradigms, different data analysis too. Also, measures of reliability and validity should also differ because these topics are also different. The research approaches are different in nature. And this is the standard layout that you can always see in most institutions. The first thing is chapter 1, which is the introduction. Chapter 2, with its literature review. We have talked about literature review in our last presentation on literature review. If you've never listened to that, you need to go back and also listen to that one. Also, chapter 3, research methodology. We talked about research methodology. Then in chapter 4, results, and chapter 5, discussion and conclusion. We have not talked about chapter 4 and chapter 5, but very soon I will be talking about chapter 4 and chapter 5. So it's very important for you to get to be familiarized with the previous videos that we have posted so that you don't stay behind. So this is the standard layout. And you will see that most of the universities, most of the departments, they use this layout, whether it's quantitative, it's qualitative, it's mixed method, they just adopt this layout as the standard layout. Then for qualitative chapter layout, for specific researchers who are normally qualitative researchers or supervisors, they would want to see different approaches. And this approach, if you check most of the studies that are done in the United Kingdom, not United Kingdom, United States of America, they kind of use this approach if they are qualitative. Chapter 1 is the introduction, then they jump from chapter 1 and they do the methodology. Then from the methodology, then they go on to literature review, and literature review results and discussion and conclusion. But you discover that when they are doing this in the practical sense, as they go and collect data, they first collect data, and after collecting data, then they come and write literature review. Then from there, then they do discussions of the findings and the conclusions. However, you might see that some of the chapters as well, qualitative chapter layout, are slightly different. They start with chapter 1, introduction, then they go to the theoretical framework or conceptual framework. By the way, when you're writing this chapter 2, you need to specify if you're using a conceptual framework, write conceptual framework. If you're using a theoretical framework, you write theoretical framework. You don't need to write both theoretical and conceptual framework. Then in chapter 3, research methods or research methodology and research methods. Research methodology and research methods, these are two different terms, so it's very important for you to also get familiarized with them. Then from there, then they go to literature review and the results, then discussions and conclusion. And you see that most of the studies, they would prefer to write conclusion as a separate chapter. I also prefer that because it makes your study very neat in terms of the outlining. So yes, it also gives you an opportunity to make sure that you make your final chapter the best chapter, or your final chapter the best chapter for your reviewers to judge you on. So it's very important for you to make sure that you become flexible, you don't become rigid with one layout, as most people will do. You often hear people arguing about the layout. It's just a layout. There's nothing more important there. So you can also change that layout and adopt a layout that your supervisor wants or your department wants. It does not change the findings. It does not change the components in your research. Then quantitative. Quantitative, in most cases, quantitative starts with chapter 1, the introduction, and some you would discover that the standard layout mainly forms much of what's happened in the quantitative research. So from there, we have got chapter 2 and chapter 3. It's all literature review, theoretical framework, conceptual framework, and literature review. It's one and the same thing. But in the conceptual and theoretical framework, we are focusing mainly on your conceptual or your theory that is going to guide your study. Then the literature review, you are focusing on a survey. You're checking what other scholars are saying regarding your topic. Then you go to chapter 4, which is research methodology. Then, of course, results, then discussions and conclusions of results. Then for other people, they would, or other supervisors or other reviewers, they would prefer you to write chapter 7, conclusion. So if you are writing conclusion as a separate chapter, then you need to make sure that you take it off from chapter 6. Then yeah, so that's the standard layout. So what we expect in this layout, chapter 1, we talked about chapter 1. I'm not gonna talk more about chapter 1, what you expect to find in chapter 1, which is the introduction. We talked about it, so you need to go and listen to the video. Then chapter 2, we also talked about chapter 2, but what I want to emphasize in this chapter 2, you will always, or you will return to this literature review throughout the process of writing your thesis. It's a very important chapter, and it's a chapter that you need to make sure that you pay much attention. Then research methodology, please refer to the video. Keep it simple. Research methodology chapter, you need to know what's happening with the research methodology. We're still gonna discuss most of those components in the research methodology. And then chapter 4, which is the results, we're gonna talk about that. In the few weeks coming, we'll be talking about, a few days coming, we'll be talking about it. Chapter 4, the results. So here in this chapter, you are describing the findings of your study. And it's very important for you to give us the demography of your respondents and outline the results of the data analysis. Tell us what you see and interpret to us what they mean. And also, wherever applicable, use tables, use charts, graphs to support your results. This is actually one of the very important chapter as you write, because this is your study. This is your contribution to the literature, to the literature, or to the existing literature actually. So it's very important for you to make sure that you do it correctly and you use the correct tools to analyze this your results. And then chapter 5, discussion and conclusions. Then in this chapter, you need to discuss the findings of your study. And we are discussing the findings for your study. And in doing that, what are you doing? You are telling us to what extent do your results support the existing literature, or does it support your literature review or your findings? Because don't forget that a literature review is a survey. So we want to see how your results are supporting your survey that you have been doing in the literature review. To what extent do they add to the findings of the previous studies? Almost the same thing. We are also looking at literature review. Your results, how are they supporting those previous studies? That is why in this chapter we want to see more of studies like these findings is consistent with the so and so studies. The findings are inconsistent. The findings aligns with that. These are the terminology that we want to see more when you are making your discussions. Then, in other words, what contribution does your study make to the literature? A contribution. That's where you are now starting to fill that gap that you have been talking about. This is the time for us to see you filling that gap. This is the time we want to see you at play. This is the time we want to see you adding value to the existing knowledge in the discussion. Then You must clearly outline the implication of your studies findings. If you are writing for policymakers, that is the government, if you're writing for the managers, if you're writing for academics, yes, what are the implications for your results? What can we tell from your results? Then you need to identify the limitation and also present a recommendation for the future studies. And to emphasize on the limitation, you need to tell us about the methodological limitation. Don't just tell us about lack of resources. Don't tell us about resources are the main is the main factor that most scholars they cite. But here we want to see and we want to hear about the methodological limitation. There are so many methodological limitations that you can cite here, but also make sure that whichever methodological limitation you are citing, it does not discredit your work. So it's very important for you to take note of that. And yes, thank you. You can share this video with the other students. You can also go to our YouTube channel, Masters and Doctoral Degree Tips and Tricks. In this group, we don't encourage writing thesis for other people. We are here to enlighten each other and to encourage each other to write our thesis and complete them in the prescribed time. Thank you so much. Enjoy your day.